Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Post Plant. Today is going to be NA Day all day. So, we're going to get into what happened in the Game Changers qualifiers and talk a little bit about some of what we expect in the main event. So, today you have me, drDelta, Daze joining us, as well as Kpsy. And yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So Game Changers happened this past weekend. If you're not aware, there were a lot of Game Changers events actually,
Oh, yeah.
globally, but we're gonna focus on NA today. And I'm loving the promotional material that they've been doing for this Game Changers. Have y'all gotten a chance to see all of the interviews and all of that?
A little bit. Not full interviews, but some clips here and there.
Yeah, it's amazing. They did one with Sholiana from Dignitas, Benita from Shopify, I believe Hannah from GNDG, and then Rise from Zeology. I think
Yep. Mhm.
high production. I mean, look at
Yeah.
this. It's beautiful, and I think it's a good way to stop building storylines around veteran players, but also kind of up and comers that you may not have heard of before. So I thought
Yeah.
it was great. Oh, they also did Alexis from C9 White. I forgot
As well. Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, I agree. They were all very well done. And the storyline piece that you mentioned is great because I learned so much about why Bedina kind of switched from from CLG, the story that happened with that into Shopify Rebellion. And so just her needing a change from what had happened after she kind of took a break from her for her honeymoon. And then the story of Rise as well, becoming a new IGL. She shared some of that in like a previous press conference, but to see how much she's grown in since the last Game Changers when she took it over was cool to hear as well. So I really hope Riot continues to put that much more production value into that, and just like you said, Days building the storylines. Well, we are. Let's see. I mean, in terms of building storylines, we do have quite a bit of issues that happened with the qualifier event. So the format for this past series was a little bit different, I would say, compared to usual. So we have, the group stages where it's a Swiss format. That
People were mentioning about how they thought it was weird to do the best of one into a best of three, even though the best of one didn't really determine whether they'd make it or not. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they would change it to that. But I think once you like read it through, it's not as complicated. But it's definitely something new that we've seen before. That's something new that we haven't seen before.
This is my theory. So originally, this bracket was supposed to be 32 teams, and then they expanded it to 48 teams. So what happened is prior, right? It was switch group stage into a double. With 32 teams, there's a switch group stage. The top 16 teams would move into a double elimination stage to compete in, getting the 8 qualifying spots. And this one, there was 48 teams in the Swiss stage, and the top 24 teams move on to the double elimination. So I think it might just be a time issue, which is why it's not all best of threes. I think like last time, if I remember correctly.
That makes sense.
Don't quote me on that though. It's been like 2 or 3 months since the first series. but that's my theory. That's what I would assume
Yeah, that makes sense.
happened.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting the mindset though to go back and forth between a best of one. So I guess let me finish. The best so you have the group stages where you have the Swiss format, and then you proceed to the second part of the qualifiers, which is a double elimination bracket. And that first game is a best of one. And so the mindset, I think, for some people on the same day to go from a best of three to then a best of one kind of threw a lot of people off.
Yeah.
And then also the idea that uh, you have some of the teams had to wait so long between them finishing up in the Swiss stages and qualifying, then having to play that one best of one for the playoffs on the same day. I think Twitter kind of went in uproar about some of that.
That's usually an issue in the Swiss format because there's always there's always those teams where you're like, oh yeah, they're gonna win this, right? But then there are those teams that are like equally matched in skill, and so they may go into possibly overtime, or it might be a 3-map best of 3, and then it just takes a lot of time for those because you have to wait for it to finish to have everyone seated properly. So yeah, Swiss format has always been just everyone. I think a lot of people. I can safely say that a lot of people don't like the Swiss format just simply because of the fact that you have to wait for everyone to finish their games.
Right. No, I've heard mixed feelings about this format. But I think it's nice, right? Is trying to mix things up, but I think with some of the feedback that they've gotten, at least on social media, that they're gonna have to change it again.
Yeah.
There's a couple of unhappy people. Okay. So in terms of kind of what had happened during the group stages, are there any games during the group stages that you all kind of were surprised about, or any particular games during the Swiss stages that caught your eye?
I totally forgot who was playing, but maybe I shouldn't, maybe because I don't know which team it was. I probably shouldn't talk about it. But I only was able to catch a couple of games, but not even like the full way through because I was doing something else. But if I had to say, if I had to take a guess, I think it was Shopify versus either Shopify versus Xset or Shopify versus CLG, one of those two at least. And that game was pretty fun to watch. It was really close. There was one moment I think Benita accidentally got satcheled into the teleporter, and
I remember that.
yeah, and I and I think they made the call like, I mean, I'm here, let's go B, I guess. And then they all went to B plant, and I think they won the round. But I remember seeing her get satcheled, and I'm like, little misinput there. But that was funny. I remember seeing that on live, and I was like, oh, okay. You see her like looking around like confused, and then everyone else just decided to take the teleporter and go B, which was the right call because there was already 4 rotating to the A site. It was on bind, and there was only 1 on B, so they were able to get the plant down. So that was my one moment from seeing live on Game Changers.
Okay.
I
you have a
was
moment?
observing. I was
You were?
observing. I was observing most of. I was observing mainstream. So one of my favorites, to watch was Man and Love Frogs, or Frogs, or if you want to say the other word, if you're allowed to.
Sure. Go
I don't know
we're
what
going.
MILFs, versus Version X and their qualifying match where Version X won, but it was really fun to watch, frogs come in, and like show off their strats on Breeze. I know Potter and Van Saley were super like hardcore fans of that, of the strats. They were really amazed of what, frogs can do.
Right.
Especially as an unsigned team, and I know frogs had a lot of roster changes like throughout
Quite a bit.
um the months, but I kind of think of them almost like a feeder team almost because a lot of their teammates do go on to be signed, it seems like. But yeah, I think you know, it was unfortunate because I would have loved to see them in the playoffs, but the problem with Swiss is kind of like it's RNG, so they faced against I think TSM X in the second round, and then they faced version X in the third round, so they didn't qualify, which sucked. But tis what it is.
Yeah. I guess just, you know, another unfortunate side effect of the Swiss bracket, but it does work out in the favors of some people. So 24 teams moved on to the second stage. And if you look at the kind of the group stages ranking, you can see which teams have a perfect score record. So Dig, Natas, Cloud9 White, Shopify Rebellion, TSM, Dart Monkeys, and also Native Gaming had a pretty good group stages. I know that when we, as a group, submitted our Preds, Native Gaming, White were at the top of our list to kind of make it through playoffs. But so they were looking good in groups, but didn't pan out in the closed qualifier bracket. So I guess we can go ahead and start talking about the bracket as well, kind of what panned out
We should
in
talk
the
about the C9 White ruling that happened.
Sure. Yeah, we can go ahead and
Yeah.
talk about that. So I mean, do you wanna explain kind of what happened during that whole fiasco?
Yeah, so this is part of the bracket. But for the first round of I believe 16, C9 White was supposed to go against Immortals.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Um and Mel put out a tweet that they got a forfeit loss due to not showing up on time because of tech related issues concerning the tournament server, which it's been historically kind of shown that the tournament servers can be kind of buggy. Um, and this kind of really was an uproar. A lot of people did not understand the ruling because recently, in the I think Masters 2 qualification rounds for NA phase were allotted like an hour plus
Or more.
or more to fix their tech issues. So a lot of people were relating that to the phase situation. A lot of people also were confused because Immortals were happily um, like ready to play them, like they didn't mind waiting for them, and also that in the Swiss bracket, they had to wait for a long duration of time. So I think a lot of people were confused about the competitive ruling um, until Valorant Riot put out an official statement that kind of clarified the situation a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, what happened was uh, the coach just
Um, so
I
yeah, go ahead, Chris.
no, I
Continue.
was gonna say like I think like I get that there's probably like miscommunication along with like the time that was uh not given to the competition. The ruling then makes sense, but then I also see it as I believe their game wasn't being streamed, so I would understand if they were being streamed and they're running on a schedule. That's why they would probably give that ruling, but I don't. But I've noticed that those types of rulings happen a lot more often, and when they do happen, it just seems kind of, especially if the game is not streamed, it just doesn't seem like the correct ruling to give. For example, I a long time ago was managing a team and one of our members was late by maybe 15-20 minutes, and we also weren't being streamed. And then we ended up forfeiting, but uh you know I don't I it was I think if it's not more than 15-20 minutes, especially if the game a Valorant game usually takes about 30 to 35, 40. um you don't really see an issue with it, especially if it's not being streamed. So I'm kind of, but I do see how the tournament organizers are thinking. You should have told us that it was this and that. We could have given more leeway and done this and etc. So I see how, maybe if they communicated better, it would have not been given. The ruling would about not have been given. But I also see that the ruling being given just didn't really make a lot of sense considering the time that was being taken up. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. And I guess the only sticking point for me is just, the um you need, like you said, communication. And I feel like if there was communication, then it probably wouldn't have happened. And if it did happen, even with communication, then I would be up in arms because,
Yeah.
um, like we've been saying with FaZe getting an hour and other teams getting even way more time
Mm-hmm.
for other issues, whether it be on stream or not,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem very consistent in that manner. But I think because of them not communicating and then they had already gotten the penalty, they didn't want to like undo it because
Yeah.
then that looks even weirder. So
Yeah, and I just and thinking about it now, if it would, I think especially with the Swiss format, no one can move on until everybody finishes their games anyway, and depending on which teams are facing each other, as long as it's not taking the full, I feel like if it's not taking the full length of a full Valorant game, then they should still be able to play, because what if a team goes into overtime and it's 16-16, and then by that time Cloud9 finishes their game 13-7. So they would still have to wait regardless, and so that's another thing that I was thinking about.
Well, this was for the round of 16, so it was out of the Swiss
Oh, okay.
format. Yeah, so this was more like, I think people were also disappointed in the ruling because it means, C9 White would have to go through the lower bracket,
Right.
mhm.
and they did knock out quite a few
Yeah,
sign teams that
and I would
were
have
hoping
loved to
for.
seen C9 and Immortals play against each other. That would have been the game to watch. But then, yeah, like you said, Days, just the fact that they had to jump all the way down to lowers, and we all know that C9 is the team that you're most likely not going to beat. If anything, you might get one map off of them. And I'm pretty sure, and I've not obviously not played, but I've been in like the space where you're in the lowers. You're like, okay, we have one more chance. We're gonna play against this team. They're on our same level, so we can most likely beat them and then get a good placement. But then if you have C9 White in the mixture of that in the lower bracket, then it's kind of, I guess, like especially like a slap to the face to newer teams. And which is not horrible, because obviously you're eventually going to face the bigger, more experienced team eventually. But especially if this was their like first or second tournament together, and then you end up playing against them, the most experienced team in the whole roster, then it definitely, like, kind of, I'm not looking for the right word. It kind of just, like, bums down your mental for the rest of the time that you're running through the bracket.
So if we look at what had happened with Cloud9, White, and Immortals, and then scroll to the lower bracket to where they had to fight back into the qualifier. So Cloud9 White first went up against Zero Marksman White, then Genji Black, and then Misfits to qualify. So the argument would be either Genji Black or Misfits Black. I think probably Misfits Black because they were playing really well like this tournament. But either of those two teams would have been able to qualify for the main event.
For sure. This qualifier was competitive.
100%.
You know, yes, Genji Black and Misfits Black were knocked out by Cloud9 White. Misfits Black had a remarkable showing though. If we can pull up the stats for that series against T9 White, that'd be great. Shout out to our producer, Link. She's doing amazing. But yeah, when I observed that match, you can definitely tell that Misfits was on their game. They took Fracture off of C9 White. And that Fracture, C9 White's Fracture does not look super solid. Even when they went against, I think, version X, they were a bit shaky too. But Misfits Black really, I think, punished some crucial mistakes. And there was mostly just little micro plays. So there's a play specifically that pops up to my mind where, what is it? It's like a pause, but it's essentially Katsumi and Bob needed to get Spike. They're running back to attacker spawn. Bob was playing KO. Kat was playing, I believe, Astra. If you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, Kat was playing on Fracture.
Yeah.
Oh, Kat was playing Omen.
Oh, Omen. My bad. I can't see. So, but who's Misfits Brimstone?
Katie.
Yeah. Okay, KDO. Katie was kind of stuck in this little corner. And Katsumi and Bob knew she was there, and they were swinging out from, I think, a Hawes into like that spawn. The you know what I'm talking about. It's the default where you usually have a breach done, and you have an Astra suck, and then you have a raise nades. That little area. But Kirio was stuck in that corner, closest to kind of like this window. And Bob was supposed to pop flash with the KO flash, pop flashes, and they were supposed to swing together. But I think Sumi kind of swung a little bit too early, so she actually ended up being blinded by the KO flash by Bob, and KDO then caught Katsumi, and then I believe the breach who was that Zoe who was playing breach on
was Slandy,
and then Slandy did the breach fault line to stun the other players pretty much. They didn't know who yet, and then because of that stun, then Katie could swing and kill Bob, and this really swung the round, in my opinion, towards Misfits. It also swung the round because I believe C9 White had numbers advantage as well. Sorry, that's a long explanation. I'll try to find a clip.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's great teamwork between Misfits Black, and considering that they had Kurosu playing as the sub until fluorescence of age to compete. I think the team did really well, and I don't anticipate any trouble like getting into the playoffs for Game Changers for Misfits next term with fluorescent on board, and then more time to practice as well. So the fact that they were able to get a map off of C9 White, even if C9 White are also going through their own transition period, they still took quite a few rounds on Haven and Bind, which is typically like their best maps, or C9 White's best maps. And I think just with the next series, it's going to be quite impressive from them. All right. Well, Misfits Black so didn't qualify with C9 White taking them out. A couple of other teams, we already talked about Gen G Black not qualifying because they were in that same part of the lower bracket. But there were also some other surprises in the lower brackets. So if we could see like the complexity side of the lower bracket and how that ended up playing out. So complexity were kicked to the lower bracket from Shopify Rebellion. But even in the lower bracket as well, one of the teams that were able to take him out was Ariana Grande Perfume, which is now my new dark horse. During the press conference that they had, they made it very clear that they're a pug team that just got together randomly for Game Changers Academy. And that they don't really have an IGL. They just all like contribute fairly equally to kind of just figure out what plays they're going to do. They don't really have set plays in terms of their comps are also very flexible. Like they'll change their comps literally during agent select. And so the ability to flex like that and still perform this well, them able to shut down. So they shut down complexity as well as version X with this style, and then only being put together right before Game Changers Academy. And also they said that they've only done a handful of scrims. So outside of the competitive experience from GCA and then the group stages, that's basically all of the time they've had together, and they still look pretty good. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the free agent teams have been showing up this qualifier. I think most signed teams were actually knocked out by free agent teams. We also have, Native Gaming White, which was my doctors. I thought, that team with Slays,
Gorge.
Arianicus, Scourge, that team would make it to main event, but they got knocked out by Solaire.
Mm-hmm.
And they have Taro and Hollywood on their team and a bunch of other dope free agents. They played really well too. Solaire did really well this tournament, as matter of fact. So these free agent teams are coming out for blood, man. The only teams I didn't lose to, like knocked out by free agent teams, were Gen G Black and Misfits. Though Gen G Black did get knocked out down to the lowers by Sanrios, who ended qualifying.
Right.
So is that too, but I've been really impressed with the free agent teams.
And so, I mean, we didn't have, or at least I personally didn't have too many expectations for complexity and why am I blank? So complexity as well as CLG. There we go. Because they just went through very recent roster changes, like picking up new members, and so literally working on synergy at the moment. So I was surprised that they didn't make playoffs, but I wasn't like overly surprised compared to like XSET, for example. XSET has been working since the last Game Changers Academy when they made their roster change, when they kind of imported the two players from Europe. So I was surprised to not that XSET weren't able to go a little bit further. But like you said, they were knocked out by Solaire, but Solaire looked very good, which was surprising because they kind of had broken up a few months ago. But I guess they just wanted to get back together and with, some new members and compete again. So it was well worth the attempt.
Yeah. Exit female. I think they won against Solera against their match, and that was like super close. It was a super close series. I do think Exit female are in the right direction. I think Sia, and Noya are really great additions. They have fragging potential, especially Noya on the chamber on split was nasty. She was just aggressive. She used her trademark effectively. She just peaked angles that I think a lot of people would be afraid of doing, and sometimes it was punished, but most of the time it was rewarded. And the qualifying match, they lost to Dot Monkeys,
Oh,
really
right.
the
Start monkeys.
who is really the I think no one is really surprised that Dot Monkeys won. They've been working very hard and diligently to make their name known. They've competed in all the I think Game Changers
Every Game
academies.
Changers this year. Or
hmm
Academy, right?
They qualified for the first Game Changers event of this year, Series 1. Recently, they competed in the Astra Cup, and they won. They didn't win. They got second place, so they are going to LAN. They're going to San Diego for that. I think um, Dot Monkeys, is the first kind of. We're not surprised that they made it through. I think we're more.
Talked about all the signed teams that we kind of expected to go a little further. But I believe, Days, you kind of have some ideas about why the unsigned teams were able to perform so well in some of their matches. Like you were able to look through some rounds and like figure out what they did so well.
Yeah, so let's first talk about Dot Monkeys. I think they are the new Polaris. You know what I mean? So I have a couple of clips from mostly I only watch the free agents team's qualification match. So you can tell that they're very coordinated together. They trust each other to just send it. So I think that clip highlights that. I have another clip from the Haven game that is also a good push. One, the bomb was not defused. So I think that kind of shows that they understand utility really well. And they know how to execute onto site as a team.
Mhm. Right.
Hunter, yeah.
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 So I think it really shows that they're really patient. Which is good as a team because this game is very having patience is really important to dictate, I think, the speed of a round, but also to navigate very pressure tight, pressure inducing um, moments. So yeah.
They regrouped, they got a new coach as well. And so I have complete faith that they will be able to, if not make it very far in the lower bracket, because they're going up against Cloud9 White first, ironically, again. If not through the finals, they'll at least make a very good lower bracket run and face Shopify, Rebellion, or Dignitas to try to get into the grand finals.
Yeah, that's a good. I mine a little bit different. So mine, I have Cloud9 White going all the way grand final. I think Dot Monkeys will actually take Dignitas. They won against Dignitas in the Astro Cup 2-1. Although Dignitas always seems to like bounce back. I
They
think
do.
Dot Monkeys, like after watching their play extensively, I think they also improve pretty fast too. I think their players just maybe turn like their mechanical prowess a little bit sooner. Sometimes Dignitas lags, and then if Dignitas lags a little bit, Dr. Monkey will just overrun them. They are aggressive. They are competent, you know, they have really good set plays. So depending on the map pool, maybe Dignitas ones, but I think Dark Monkey's edges out. I do have Immortals beating Dignitas in the low round too. Because I think Immortals they play really fast. Um, they also again have really good fragging power too, but I don't think that fragging power will stop Shopify Rebellion. Um, when I was a bit concerned watching like Benita kind of getting into the role of I don't know if she's the IGL of Shopify, but I was just so worried about like the integration because I think, you know, having a new player is always hard to have. But they looked really good against XSET FE. And I think, you know, those ladies do not like to lose.
No, they
You
don't.
heard Benina in her interview that she wants to win it all, right?
Right.
And you know, Benina is a long competitor since CS:GO. I think having that, you know, what Alexis said about Shopify is that, you know, you tell that their mentor was kind of boomed really early on.
Yeah.
Benina brings that experience, brings that mental composure. Benina's been through a lot worse like downfalls and still wins the championships. You know what I mean? She's been to a lot of lands, which I think is going to be very important when Game Changers International comes in around. You know, a lot of these teams haven't played on land before, so I think Benita brings that kind of maybe grounding that Shopify needs, and Shopify has some really crazy fraggers like Sonder. Like, hello?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Yeah.
So I think Immortals and Shopify is going to be a banger match, though.
I agree.
So it's Dignitas and Dark Monkeys, and then I have Shopify winning about Dark Monkeys. For the same reason why I think Shopify is going to win against Immortals, but this one is going to be a really close one, I think.
Yeah.
Right. That's something I actually wanted to ask them, or ask someone that knows. What does the calling look like on the team now, with Benita on it? If KP's still like in charge, or if it's a dual role, or if yeah, I'm curious to hear what that new calling structure is like.
I wouldn't be surprised if they both, like maybe one person's, they're both co-IGLing with each other probably, because maybe, because I know like from watching like the comms videos and streams and everything, Benita's a very cool and calm player. Like she doesn't get tilted or frustrated. She always tries to bring the mental up. So I feel like maybe if anything, that's like her role in like maybe, you know, keeping that the team spirits up, and also maybe, you know, if everyone's being frustrated, she can be the one to step up and maybe call some plays and, you know, have everyone, you know, get back into the mindset of winning. That's probably what I would put her as.
Sense.
For sure. And I think more teams now have kind of opted into like having multiple people like IGL. There's like a set callers where it's like, okay, one person maybe takes more of an attack, you know, or there's like a structure where it's not just the responsibility is solely on one individual, which is I think great because having sole responsibility on such an important role can be very daunting and very stressful. So much pressure is on your shoulders. You know, one bad call and you lose the entire series. You know, sometimes it's like that, especially in a game in Valorant where it's very momentum based. I mean, you see it all the time, no matter what you watch. So I mean, I wonder about that too. You know.
Yeah, the what I've heard from some teams that do have at least two, like one person takes the pre-rounding IGLing and then one directs mid-round. So as long as it's clear, like you can basically have anyone do it. So, okay. Well, any other thoughts about the main event and kind of your expectations for what's going to happen this week?
Uh, no, not really. I just hope it's all good games and just good times. That's pretty much it. Because um, because a lot of game changers events do have a reputation of something happening in the event, whether it's with the players or with the game itself. So hopefully it's free of all that, or if anything does happen, it's very minimal and we can just have a good time and the players have a good time, casters, staff, and audiences, and then the games are just, good and entertaining.
Any thoughts about the event as well?
Me, I mean, I'm excited. I think C9 White, against Misfits showed that they're not like they're reachable. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like they're not perfect. They showed some cracks. I think it's
Hmm.
mostly. I think honestly, it's just mostly because they have Bob, a new player, coming to the roster, and so there's new kinks to figure out. How do
Yeah,
they communicate? How
right.
how can we communicate better? It's not. They played with Annie for like over a year. Since
Hmm.
Magical, I think
Yeah.
Yeah, way
innately,
over here.
like you play with someone that long, you understand their player tendencies. Um,
Mhm.
Hmm.
I don't think they you can tell that maybe there's a little bit of just minor issues due to communication that obviously again can only be developed um from here on out. But yeah,
Uh,
I'm excited. I think Dignitas has we often think of TSMX and Dignitas riding that fourth place, but with teams like Drop Monkeys and Immortals, like who knows who's going to be third or fourth place. And second
Hmm.
place I think is just as competitive.
right. Well, there's a lot to look forward to this
Hmm.
week. And yeah, as you all have said, just so much talent has come from the unsigned teams. Players are continuing to grow and catch up to C9 White. And yeah, next episode, hopefully, we'll be able to talk a bit more about the results, see what surprising things occurred. Hopefully, there isn't too much drama that we have to cover, but we'll be able to talk a little bit more about the main event as well as some of the other regions that had their share of their main tournaments and their qualifiers as well. So, thank you all for watching. I hope you can make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. And continue to follow us on socials for any updates. So, thank you again for watching and have a good night.
Bye, guys.
Bye.